mental psyche developmental focus curriculum.
Sorry, would you mind saying?
It's to help kind of to achieve a similar state of grace that is often found in those who suffer. So whether it's through the resilience of trauma, or the kindness of being treated poorly, or the coherence of needing to find beauty in being encrusted in violent systems. So there's quite a few topics, and I have some sheets. I'm going to try to leave most of the cerebral, logistical, informational aspects to the sheets, and we'll play some games, and we'll do some dialogue practices that come out of theater form. We'll dance, hopefully, and maybe we'll massage and storytell and do rituals to help you to understand the concepts. So I'll also integrate somatic practices just to help increase nervous system regulation as we go along. And then finally, we will engage a couple consent-based practices consistently, repetitiously, because my hope is that we'll get really clear on what is an enthusiastic yes for any part of it. And as much as possible, I've had little sub-side projects in case you're like, no, I don't want to do that. So each of the sections I'll follow with a Q&A. And this way you can ask questions if you didn't understand a word or you want to dig into a concept a little bit more if we have time. And I thought we would begin with a somatic practice because it's nice for settling. And the one is called Golden Ball Qigong. So you're just going to hold your hands out as if you have a ball. Then you're going to inhale to make the ball big. And you're going to exhale to contract it. And you're going to inhale to breathe it in. And you're going to exhale to breathe it out. You're going to inhale to breathe it down. And then you're going to exhale to just... So let's do at least 2 more like that. Yeah? So you have a ball. Inhale to expand. Exhale to contract. Inhale to breathe it in. Exhale to breathe it out. Inhale to breathe it down. And exhale to release it. And once more, you have a ball. Thank you so much for doing that with me. Deeply appreciate it. I just want to start with the fact that 90% of intentional communities fail. And before you ask, by fail, I mean that they don't sustain in terms of the temporal. So monoculture, like monocropping, lacks the diversity needed for systems to flourish. Move at the speed of trust, says Adrienne Marie Brown. And there's something to be said about how the turtle wins the race. And what speed do we usually move at in this like normative mold? Well, urgency is a characteristic of white supremacy culture. The kind that burrows into your brain and makes sleeper agents out of all of us. Internalize is one of the ways that we call this. So before we go into our practice, I'm going to share your first sheet, which is on the characteristics of white supremacy culture, so that you can see a little bit about the ways that we all internalize, thank you, deeply problematic contexts. And in case you want one that goes on and on in description, here's the one that's got a bit more information. So, as mentioned, these are take-homes. You can take time in between to look it over, to do as you please with the information. But we're going to fairly quickly move on to the more somatic.
I need one of these.
Yeah, and then I need one of the others.
And one more of these.
We might not have enough for everyone.
I'll give mine.
You can share.
Because I can pick them up later when I don't have my glasses, so it will be really working on intuition this one.
Yes, sir. Do you need both?
Well, or I could take a picture later. Yeah.
Okay.
All good.
How about that?
So-
Maybe you and I can take a picture of
A and
the ones that
B
we-
also
Yeah.
talks
Okay.
about biomimicry. And this is how we can emulate, as humans, we can emulate nature to find ways of sustaining and flourishing. So, did you know that borage is a great companion plant for strawberries? It will stop the bugs from eating them. And it's a wonder that we don't have more things like apprentice or mentorship programs, just to give an example. So I'm going to share the sheet on biomimicry to see some of the ways that we have things like mycelium and fractal design in nature to use, or murmuration, and how goose are doing shared regenerative leadership with an ease of transition all the time to really mimic nature. And then I'm going to ask you if willing and or able to go ahead and pick up the sheets and put them away, because we're going to go into a dance. We're going to try to move at the speed of fast and use dance to help us to kind of tap into this more organic aspect of our nature. So to begin, we have a prompt. So the first prompt is like, who are you? If you could come up with one physical movement that is a way of saying hello, this is me, I want you to take a minute and go ahead and think about and come up with that movement. Yeah. And as we're thinking about it, this is also a good time for questions and answers. And before we start doing any movement, we're going to do our first consent exercise. So I would liken it to like the Likert scale. So if it's like on one end, you're like, I really don't want to do that. I really don't want to. And on the other end, you're like, I'm really excited to do that. I really want to do that. And we're going to use a rainbow. So we'll have red be like, no thanks. I feel like that's going to trigger me, or my body doesn't want it. And we're going to have indigo be like, I'm stoked. And so for the first time we do this, I'm going to really ask you to just take a moment to really think and feel in and say, like, what degree do you really want to do a dance-based exercise where you have a movement that expresses, hey, this is me.
Is it indigo or violet?
Violet or indigo? Violet, I think. You're right. It's indigo and then violet.
Just
Thank you
wondering
very
if it was
much.
like the whole
So
way of-
red is no thank you, completely no. And violet is like yes to the maximum degree. And you can be like yellow, and you can be like orange, and you can be like green. And so, sorry I don't have a rainbow. I was hoping to have it, but let's take a minute and say, like, maybe just say out loud if you feel comfortable with that. What's your color on the exercise of dancing and expression of yourself?
We start out.
Yeah.
Green.
sure.
I was gonna say
Oh no.
Violet.
Green.
yellow.
Green.
Green.
Yellow.
Orange.
Perfect.
Lost.
Yeah.
Blue.
Lost.
So, do you know whether you like the idea of doing a dance to express yourself or not?
Yes.
And to what degree do you like it or not?
I understood the edges.
Yeah, but you
Which
don't
is-
remember the colors of the rainbow?
Yes.
It's Roy G. Biv. So it's red, orange, yellow, green,
Blue.
blue,
Okay.
indigo, violet.
Okay. So I would be yellow.
You're
Yellow.
You're yellow. So I'm also going to suggest, if it's preferential,
Thank
you
you.
can also draw something that indicates this is me. So maybe like, what is your favorite shape? I'm going to hand pens to the people who gave me more of a yellow side of the spectrum that were like, I don't know. When if you're like a little bit more in the middle and you're thinking about it, I'm going to also just ask you to ask, is it because, where is my resistance? Is my resistance because, no, I actually really don't want to do it? Or is my resistance, I'm touching in with my body? Is my body ready for this? Is my resistance, I'm a little bit nervous and embarrassed, and maybe it's a growing edge? I want us to really take time for this. The consent practice is going to be repeated and repeated, because we really need to get clear on what is a true yes for us and things. Yeah? Okay. So, for those that are ready and have a movement, I'm going to invite you to stand and dance your movement of, hey, this is me. And for those that aren't, there are pens, there are alternate exercises.
I have pain in my leg
Yeah.
today, so can I sit and do the
You can
movements?
absolutely sit and do the movement. The movement could be just something with your hand. You can modify any of the exercises because you're the master of the universe.
Can we do both?
Yes, you can do both.
And just for the camera, could you, I mean, not that you want to like maybe just give a visual representation, since I'm basically only filming you, about something like that?
I'm gonna do the exercise.
Okay, excellent. All right, very good.
Lovely. Okay. So again, you can use the back of the papers to draw on if you're choosing to draw something that represents this is me. And then otherwise you can come up with a dance. That's gonna be my movement. I'm just saying, hello, this is me. And take a moment to think about it, and then take a moment to perform it. And we're moving at the speed of trust. This is the exercise. It's the trust that you're building in yourself, and the trust that we build collectively, which doesn't have a time urgency. One of the things that we talked about in terms of internalized white supremacy culture. There is no rush. This is the only moment. Take your time, go in your corner, go outside if you need to. There's a lot of information, but we really structured the time so that we could just learn how to take our time for one. And to be in our bodies. So this is my movement. And if you have one that has come up for you, feel free to share it when you're ready.
Oh, well. And I'll just,
Lovely. You're welcome to close your eyes if it feels like it's easier to presence with yourself in that way. No one is, you're not required to do anything, not required to share it with anyone. We're just taking a minute to get into our bodies and move at the speed of trust. That's the exercise.
So we're gonna do it then at the same time
You're
also?
gonna do it whenever you feel like you want to do it. That's what it is. Yes. Welcome. We're just coming up with a movement that expresses this is me. We're coming up with a movement that expresses this is me. We're moving at the speed of trust. This is the speed with which I am ready to do the exercise. Everyone's finding their own speed with which they're doing the exercise, which is moving at the speed of trust. We have practiced consent. You do not need to do this exercise. You can sit down and draw a picture that says this is me. That is perfectly fine. There isn't one right way. Another quality of white supremacy culture, the one right way narrative that gets internalized. There isn't a right way. We're each of us creators, and there's space for all of us to take our time, move at the speed of trust, presence in our bodies, not be so cerebral, and take a moment to move at the speed of trust. This is the exercise. And you can also be complete when you're complete. You can take a moment to rest when you're feeling that you're done. And you can continue as long as you would like. You're welcome to go outside and do this exercise the whole time. There is no time urgency, a characteristic of white supremacy culture. So I am complete. I'm going to sit down. I have a second movement exercise, but I think what we're going to do is we'll circle back to it so we can transition through content, and then we will touch on it again towards the end. So now I want us to play a game, and I do think that it's important for knowledge management, for like accessing information and for learning to create and infuse fun and to infuse joy. Find it where you can find it, right? So, so we're gonna start with a scavenger hunt. So I want to teach you. I want us to explore the concept of greetings, and again to explore the concept of consent. So, somewhere hidden in this tent, there are some papers with questions on it. and there's like, yes, do you have your hand up? You're looking good. Did you have your hand up?
No.
And for the sake of the fact that I didn't put tons of time into figuring it out, how to explain the game, and how we're slowly taking our time to get into play and things like that, I will tell you that it's hidden under some of your chairs, your cushions.
Yep.
So, we're letting.
Are we starting?
Yeah, I mean,
We did.
Oh, you found
Have fun class.
Someone found another.
Englishman
So then, do you feel like reading? Wait a second. The consent on a scale of red to indigo. How much do you really?
Still an indigo.
Okay, great. Awesome.
We
Now
found
then.
Violet, yes.
Violet.
Violet.
She's
Okay,
Violet.
great. You know, it's relative. Perfect.
Okay, permission consent. Is this okay? Are you excited to try this? It's okay to say no. And can I tell you this?
Can I tell you this or can I ask you this?
Can I ask or can I tell you
So
this?
with DEI, we often say, people are like, where are you from? And we say, preferably you would say, is it okay if I ask where you're from? And there's something that this does very particularly, it helps us to share power. It's this, that actually you are allowed to reclaim power in this situation. And what a good opportunity to then share our definitions. I do find, especially when we talk about subject matter that can go heavy and deep, like diversity and inclusion, like social justice, like oppression, it's really interesting how often people don't know what the words mean. And so I think it's a good place to start, is to just have some definitions. And again, you're welcome to read them as you please.
Here, and I'll just. Oh, that's just the second part, right?
No, that's
It's just one page.
Sorry, there are more pages. You'll make your way.
So this is 2 pages you gave out, right?
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Oh, shoot.
So this is part 2.
You'll make your way. So I think the first, maybe not the first one, the third one, which is like very long. I love it because it talks about the same way we were talking about in white supremacy culture being internalized. It says you don't need an active agent, you don't need a bad guy.
Yeah.
You don't need a bad guy. It's an operating system. It's an operating system. It was set up a long time ago. It's operating now, and it's operating in such a way where it's contributed to by rules, by expectations, by the way that we hold, for instance, urgency in our body or perfectionism in the way that we interact. So it's an important definition distinction, because a lot of the time where the problem happens is the way that we hold it in our body, including resistance to talking about it. And one of the things I do say often that I think is so interesting is if you over-identify with being part of a member of an oppressed group, you tend to have a guilt and a shame and a contractive response to talking about it. And if you're a member of a marginalized group, you tend to have relief. You tend to feel like, oh, we're talking about my reality, how lovely. So it's important to know that there's often a different somatic experience to having the dialogue. And not quite yet, we will go into some dialogue practices to get a little bit more comfortable with like, how do we talk about these things? And maybe now is good. Yeah, I think actually now is a great time. So we'll go into the dialogue practice. And this, I'm gonna invite someone to do it with me. Ready? Let's go. And here, for those that want to maybe take a little look at what we're saying, how comfortable are you with rising on an indigo to red, like, consent scale? Orange. She would rather be sitting.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask the group, like, how comfortable are they with receiving the information of us doing a dialogue with me in this position, maybe turning a little bit? Is it okay?
Mm-hmm.
Violet.
Wonderful.
Violet.
Wonderful.
Actually, you
Since
realize
Violet-
that I had an impulse to say yes, but actually
Yeah.
I rechecked with me and I read.
You don't want to?
No.
That's great.
Interesting.
Awesome. I'm so happy.
Welcome.
Great. Awesome. So I'm going to be person A and you'll be person B on the list. You have your dialogue sheet?
Yeah.
Did I give it to you? Yes. Okay, great. So I will be person A and you'll be person B.
But
Did you
now,
see
he's
that?
red.
Wait.
Just saying-
You
Oh,
said
you
you
don't
You
want
said
to
that
do
you don't want to do the
Yeah.
exercise
really?
at all.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
good. Lovely.
Okay.
Do you
So
want to do
I
exercise?
can do the exercise.
Okay, cool. Awesome. I so appreciate that, Matthias. Such good modeling. Okay. Awesome. So I'm gonna be person A and you're person B. And I just have one dialogue, but there's so many. And we just have two different ways that it could go. And I would like to explore if the first way happened, what you would do next. Okay, so wow, she really irritates me. It's just like the way she talks to me. It's something in her tone. She's over explaining everything to me. It's like she thinks I'm incompetent. She never talks to the white guys here like that.
Whoa, settle down. Maybe if you talk to her calmly, she would consider your opinion and issues.
Never mind. I shouldn't have said anything. Forget it. So this is one way the conversation could go. So we're gonna try another. She irritates me so much. It's like she over explains everything. There's this tone in her voice, like she thinks I'm incompetent, and she never talks to the white guys on her team like that.
I can't begin to understand what your experience is like. I'm sorry you're having to deal with that. Is there any way that I can help?
Thank you, actually. I dealt with such a horrible experience on the bus here that I know I'm still triggered. I feel a little better after getting a chance to talk it out with you. And I think what I really need to do is just bring it up to her when I cool down, or ask someone on the awareness team to include some prep training on it for the next gathering if I'm still not up for approaching her. Yeah. So the first one is a silencing tactic called tone policing. So tone policing is where you're worried about the way the message is given rather than the content of the message, and it is a way to shift the conversation into a close rather than to engage on the topic. Now, for the second, the improper response, as it's labeled, we can do reconciliation processes. We can see that we have re-traumatized us, we've created additional harm, and that we can do processes of care. And there's a very specific process of care that I do called alchemy of the apology. So this time we are going to be doing a writing exercise. So I will just share a little bit about the model with you, and then I will invite you to work toward the exercise. And the exercise is to write an apology. Okay, so the model is, it's a 4-part sequence. One is just a willingness to self-interrogate. I call it the trauma deep dive. So what happened to you that made you a person that could commit harm? And then the second part of it is a detailed accounting. So I'm sorry to say, like, I'm sorry is not an adequate response. So liberation is in the details. So you have to really account for the nuance of what was this moment of harm. And then it's empathy. It's really understanding like the impact that you could have had on somebody going forward, like the prolonged impact of the harm. And then you can do this kind of reparations and accountability taking place. So can I interrupt? Absolutely.
This is in dynamics where the harm is obvious. Like, I've been in situations where I've had to repeatedly explain the harm, which in and of itself is traumatic.
Yes.
And then I had to have somebody say, want me to apologize for their fragility.
Right.
And by step 4, I lose grace.
Yeah.
Because I'd questioned myself in the first place, which in and of itself was, when I reflected on it, was kind of harmful in and of itself.
Yes.
Because why am I questioning my reaction to something? But I did, and I asked others. But that point of, then I'm being asked because you feel bad.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not apologizing for that fragility.
Right.
And so this is in the kind of clear-cut, I've been harmed, I've done the harming. I'm going to apologize for it. I'm going to understand it. I'm going to try to take steps to understand, to deal with it. But it feels like this is like the utopia.
Yeah. So for me, apologies are, as somebody who is still trying to build boundary up, they are my hard limit. If I have experienced certain levels of harm, I require an apology. And I request them, and I request that they be full. In other cases, like the exercise that is written here, I'll write the apology to myself. And in fact, this model was created by a victim of childhood sexual trauma and abuse, who recognized that this was a very common thing, to want the apology, having had that particular level of trauma, and to never receive it from the abuser. So the exercise is actually to write yourself an apology, either from someone that has hurt you, so that you can see and hear and feel the validation of the words, so you can build a resilience from receiving something that other people may not have the capacity to provide you. But also, you know, you can do a generalized one. You can write an apology to future generations. You can write an apology from yourself to somebody that you harmed. But today and now, that's the exercise. I will say that I'm happy to approach the particular example that you're giving, because I do know what you're talking about and it's nuanced. But maybe everyone can take a pen, start to begin, and then we can chat a little bit more about it. Yeah, all people do. And you're welcome to do it on your phone, yes.
I have a question around apology, because it says you request apology. What's demanding apology?
So this is like the difference between how you define, you know, bounds and ultimatums, again, for instance. So I'm not telling you what you need to do. I'm understanding that without this, I can't relate with you. So that's what I mean. When there have been networks that I've left because, and I usually, if it gets to that point, I do a conscious request for a reconciliation process, and I'm happy to support. But if there's a resistance to doing the process, that's usually when I remove myself.
In my experience, what I saw in conflicts is when there's a request for apology, there's a tension rising in the space that often the person that was doing harm either was unconsciously doing it,
Right. Yeah.
or was doing harm as a result of a harm that this person experienced itself, and there's like a kind of perpetrating apology needed from all the people involved somehow, from somewhere.
So
Harm was perpetrated.
one of the concepts that is really core in countering oppression is intent versus impact. Yes. So it really doesn't matter what your intention is, what your story is, what your trauma is. It's the impact that you've had on the other person. So that isn't to say that you're demonized, because I'm not talking about victim-villain narratives, and I'm personally deconstructing from being the savior, so I'm playing the game as well. So I'm just talking about these are processes that create kindness and can re-infuse coherence. And it's very cultural. There are certain cultures that are happy to apologize all day long, and other cultures where it's much more difficult for them. And as a practice, I find that it isn't really known. So again, I'm sure it would be something where people would have resistance if they don't actually know how to put together an apology, which is why you guide people through the process. Okay. So yes, I invite you to write an apology.
I have a question before we go forward. And obviously, if it's out of the flow, I'm fine to step away. Many years ago, I heard somebody entering a shop trying to sell something. He was a professional salesperson. 9 in the morning, the guy just opened the shop, and he threw at him a bunch of, not inviting statements about his presence there. So here, instead of a client, I have a guy to sell me stuff. And then the answer of the sales guy stayed with me forever until now, which was, "Good morning, Mr. X. Offense is a choice."
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that it's a light choice to decide that somebody does specifically and intentionally abuse me or somebody physically. That's an easy thing. But what I'm saying is, how much of this can we cut from the beginning if we choose not
I'm-
to be offended, that is one question. Because I understand that this is a way to deal with ultimately the inability to choose how much you are going to feel affected by whatever anybody else did. So if we go to the duality of intent impact, you choose the impact that you feel.
And you also, to go back to intent, you also need to choose what is the outcome that you're trying to get out of the situation. Because if the outcome is to be right, or if the outcome is to create peace and to make sure that you can sustain connection, you'll have two different reactions. So this idea of I need the idea of offense to be something that you can be in control of, you know, and that is the concept that I want to hold versus this relationship has value to me. So I'm going to reevaluate what's going to be the most important concept that I'm going to hold in the connection and to recognize that people have needs. It's not for me to really define other people's needs. They should be able to define it for themselves. And sometimes apologies are a very, very easy way to meet the need for gentleness, for kindness, for connection. So,
And yes, I agree with all that, but still my point in my mind is valid, which is
absolutely.
where do I make the choice
Absolutely.
of feeling offended or whatever? And before we go there,
And this is a
let me give you a concrete example.
Yes.
I intend to come to this kind of gatherings
Yeah.
because I do believe that I get a lot of that and I contribute somehow. But there is a systemic thing that is, excuse my French, getting in my nerves.
Yeah.
And this is the white man syndrome. I am white.
Yeah.
I'm a man.
Okay.
To be worse, I'm from Europe.
Yeah.
I'm from Portugal. And I'm from Lisbon. This is where the colonizers started.
Yeah.
I have nothing to do with that. And I
Yeah,
keep
but we
on
we
coming-
all have something to. No, I'm going to go ahead and interrupt you now. We all have something to do with that, which is why the way that we talked about white supremacy culture was characteristics like perfectionism and urgency. You're the first person in the space, which is about countering oppression, to say, I'm a white man, and so my relationship to this story has X, Y, and Z. I'm a black woman. I'm a black, queer, neurodivergent single mother. Did I bring my personal story of how I feel about oppression and how it affects me into the space and what we're doing? So
Thank
yes,
you
I
for
agree.
your acceptance of what I'm trying
Maybe
to say.
not.
I think
yes,
that I'll rest
but
my
I
case
hear
here.
you. Yes, the space for getting into necessarily the personal traumas. But
This is
I
not
do
a personal
appreciate.
trauma.
I do
This
appreciate.
is just
Yes,
saying,
reaction
if you would
and
appreciate, you would have
offense and-
allowed me to finish.
No,
so I'll
but
just finish by
I,
now.
I'm not
I'm
trying to
listening
be about
you.
time urgency.
I understand that.
But I am going to use this as a good opportunity for us to do another somatic practice. So, to help regulate our nervous systems. And I'm happy to go into this discussion in more detail with you, like you were suggesting
But I'm
before.
not. That is not the point. I was just giving you an example of how can we choose to still cope with something that hurts us, but in the greater
You're
scheme of
allowed to
things.
have hurts. You're allowed to have them.
But in the greater scheme of things, you still choose to put up with something that you feel unjust. And if
But
any of us
but
believe
not
in
everyone has
reincarnation,
choice. That's the point of oppression. Oppression takes away some people's
that's why I
choices.
started to say I don't know what it is to be
Yes,
harmful,
exactly.
harmfully or physically offended in a way that you can simply not forget. Never mind.
Right.
If you can.
And microaggressions, one of the things in the top of the definition is described as death by 1,000 cuts. It's those little things that happen over time that start to build up to the point that they can really limit your ability to function in the world on less of a physical, obvious level, but are still very impactful. So I'm going to invite us to do some bringing down the heavens. So we're going to go ahead and rise as willing and or able. And we're just going to do a couple breathing exercises. You're welcome to do it sitting as well. Remember our consent exercise. Think about your color. Feel into what feels right. So we're just going to like lift our arms and then exhale to bring them down and lower them down. So we're going to inhale up. Exhale down. So now let's do one where we're just bringing it forward to the forehead and then down. Forward again. And down. And one more time like this. And then I'm going to invite you again to do a chi shake. Just shaking it out. And then I'm going to invite you to do just a little bit of EFT. So you're just going to tap your heart. You can sit if you'd like. And you're going to say, even though I get overwhelmed sometimes, I deeply and completely accept myself.
Even though
I get overwhelmed
sometimes, I deeply and completely accept myself.
So I'm going to read you a little bit of poetry I wrote for the Alchemy of Apology. And it starts with the Ho'oponopono, if you know it. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. Those be healing words, the kind that remake you. My sheikh said you have to crack open the cardamom shell of the heart. Vulnerability is its own superpower. We're so armored, jaded, and afraid. With good reason. Don't let anyone tell you different. But micro moments of freedom are often all we have. Temporary autonomous zones. Don't miss them. Cultivate in the quiet stillness of the heart all that is missing and yearning. Let it carve out mansions of space within. Then, when sweetness travels from another's lips to your ears, let your heart crack a little to let the light in. So, I want to do a time check and a vibe check to see how people are feeling.
Time 12:38.
Perfect. And how are people feeling?
Indigo.
Lovely.
I just need to pee, but apart from that, I feel
Let's
fine.
take a break. And go. Pee.
Just nip down for.
Personal freedom, personal responsibility. I happily honor you and your need to take care of your body.
I don't want to miss anything.
No worries. I'll make sure we go into the next one, but we won't come out again until you're back. No time urgency. So the next, yes,
It's until 45 or
we're gonna go to 1
okay,
because we started at 12.
earlier.
No problem, love.
Okay.
And now let's save some sheets for you. So the next thing we're gonna go into is the 8th Circuit Consciousness Model. So this one is quite interesting. It's super fun. And I really, actually, it's like 2 sheets each. And I really struggled to figure out which exercise I really do. Connection to it, because there's so many good ones. You guys are great. Let me just give you this. And you this. So you can make your way there. Actually, we want to do something top one. Okay. So as needed, there's some more versions of the sheets, not the ones that are going around, but the older ones.
Oh, okay, got it.
Okay. So the 8th Circuit Consciousness Model is one that was developed by people that were doing psychedelic research in the universities. So they charted the aspects of consciousness. So you have Circuit 1 being connected more with your physical body, or what my coach calls the biomaintenance unit. Circuit 2 is the emotional body, so it's focuses like boundaries and things like this, or self-worth. Circuit 3 is meaning making. So a lot of what we're doing right now is showing you models and formats and things like that. That's some Circuit 3 stuff. And Circuit 4 is social navigation. So it's like what I like to refer to as social games. So people play the purpose game. Some people play the adulting game. Some people play the mating game. There are different ways that people play the game socially. And the first 4 circuits actually operate as anchors. So the next 4 circuits are shocks. There are these bigger shocks to the system. They have a tendency to potentially deregulate you, but all are aspects of your consciousness are really important. So circuit 5, I like to call free flow ecstatic wander mode. So it's this child of awe and wonder that's like in touch with its context of ecstasy. Obviously, if that is a little bit overamped and malfunctioning, you can ground in your body, right? You can eat some grounding food, or you can get some sleep if you're a bit too ecstatic. Circuit 6 is mastering your reality. So this is the neurohacking magician. So this is where we're doing these nervous system regulation techniques, being able to tune into what our body needs in each moment to tweak. Circuit 7 is this kind of oneness thing, right? And you can absolutely get overamped in this. People who do tend to suffer from psychosis. So it's this everything, everywhere, all at once.
Can you repeat it? About psychosis.
People who are overamped in circuit 7, one of the malfunctions or the experiences of this is psychosis. So
Okay.
it's this everything everywhere all at once. So one of the ways that you ground this on the circuits is creating meaning, right? So the circuit 3 is also language. It's like, how do you orient to reality? So like I said, you can have kind of malfunctions and intelligence increase in any of the circuits. And each of these has a bunch of complex,
I mean, clearly there's a lot of content. Could you just clarify again circuit?
Yep.
What is a
concept?
circuit?
What is
Yeah,
a circuit in this context?
So this is just the model. This is the map.
Okay.
And so each circuit is an aspect of consciousness.
Okay.
And there are a few, yes.
Does that aspect, when you say aspect of consciousness, does that have any connection to particular levels of density of reality in terms of physical, mental, emotional, so on and so forth?
No, they're more often connected to different substances that you can use that induce particular qualities. So when we get to circuit 8 and we're talking impermanence, this would be connected to Bufo, for instance. So something that gives you this experience of death or non-locality or the void, which is what circuit 8 is. And then again, Bufo is a frog medicine that is taken.
Oh, okay.
Because I associated circuit 8 with Vipassana,
Yes, right. And also
which is
DreamWorks.
obviously which is obviously a non-consumer based, consumption based.
But the thing is that
But it's
there
a
are-
practice
it's-
based,
right.
energetic practice
And
based.
it's also a quality of the consciousness.
Yeah.
So there's multiple things that can induce it, but you can also understand and make certain changes. So within this particular coaching school, there's practices that help you. So I'll talk to you about a common circuit 3 malfunction. Have you ever had somebody who just tells this one story, and it's just one story, and they just tell this one story about the way things are and the way things are? One of the practices that is used in this system is to make them argue the opposite story. And sometimes you can see how much they struggle to even pretend to be able to say the opposite story, because it's a reality tunnel that they're tuning to, right? But there is choice. The map is not the territory.
So just to clarify, it seems like these 8 levels are a combination of, in the first 2 instances, the physical and emotional body, and then it's like a combination of some of the densities, some of the states of consciousness, as well as like some of the practices and habits that kind of transcend all of those.
That can be one way
Is
to
that-
understand it.
Okay.
So we have a practice for this, and it is the polarity exercise. And so I'm hoping we've done the consent ritual enough that I really usually do not include a lot of contact in my workshops. But I am going to invite you to think about your color, and we're going to maybe do a massage-based exercise. So you can be starting with massaging the hand, and I would encourage if you choose to do it, starting with something as simple as massaging the hand first. And then you can explore whether or not you want to exchange massage from other aspects of the body. So for those who feel that they are, and I will really encourage that you be indigo, violet, indigo or violet, but no less, and want to do a massage-based practice that just begins with the hands, to do a polarity ritual, which is attached to this. Maybe you can like identify yourself one way or another. And the other ones I will explain a different practice too that you can do. And so for the polarity ritual, what we're going to do is we're going to take 2 opposites, right? 2 things that have a very particular emotional charge. So let's say we have a list and you can choose. So it can be freedom and oppression, it can be pain and pleasure, it can be success and failure. It doesn't matter what it is. So whatever feels like is the one that you want to do with the charge. And then as you're receiving the massage, I'm going to encourage you to breathe in one of the qualities that you consider to be the positive one, and breathe out the quality that you consider to be the negative one. The idea is to essentially neutralize the qualities after a while, but this is going to just be one way I suggest we engage this practice. So who would
I
like to
don't
do?
really understand it. I'm sorry.
Do you want to do massage?
Yes, but I don't
Great.
understand this.
So when you, there's 2 things, opposites, like good and bad, strong and weak.
Yeah.
Pick whichever one you want.